All right. Hi, Bill Lewis. I'm co-director of the PBRN, associate professor at WVU in the Eastern Division. I think a lot of you guys know me. Um, Today, I was just asked to give an overview of how to ask a clinical research question, give some rundown. I work a lot with our residents in teaching this and help them develop ideas and research questions for their poster presentations. So if we can go to the next slide here. So the process of it, I like to start with the process first and then what goes into actually a good question. I always want people to kind of start with a broad concept or idea. What's your interest? So when the residents come to me, I'm interested in pediatrics, or and have a broad view of what they want to do. From there, I like them to get out and kind of research the area a little bit. What's unknown? What problems are we having with? And focus down a little bit and keep narrowing in and narrowing in. When you have a research idea or a concept, I find the answers become a lot easier as we get down into a real specific question in a real specific area. When you're asking these big, broad ones, a lot of times that's not the most doable. You have to have access to everything. You have to have the data points. So we try to get everybody to really narrow down and look at your specific question. So, you know, I think of one of our residents do the home visits help. And over time, he really focused in and do home visits help a rural population in the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia who have been readmitted with COPD. And as you narrow it down, you can really answer that question. When you're out broad, there can be too many variables and everything across the board. So again, I like the process, start broad, look and see what we know, and then narrow it down before you finally identify what your final question is. So that's always my kind of overview on where we start with it. On the specifics then of what makes a good research question, can we go on to the next one? I apologize, I'm off. I've had to run this one on my phone, so I can't drive my own PowerPoint. But good research questions are focused, something we can actually find the answer to, or researchable, they're feasible, they're things that we have access to, they're specific. Again, we're not going too broad. We get a level of complexity. We're not just yes, no, and they're relevant. They tie back into something we're looking for. So the next set of slides. So these are the focused and researchable traits that we try to bring out and draw out across the board. So if you want to go ahead, and this one's got a few clicks. So, okay, we can hold the first one there. So again, focused questions. Well, I can't even read my own slide now. Give me 1 second to see if I can. So you really want to try to get your question down to a single focus for the first one. If you're asking too many questions and too many problems, I'm having a discussion with one of the students today. They're looking at domestic violence screens. So she's asking, oh, how are providers' views on it? How's it firing to the providers? What are the patient's views? What are this? And, you know, I had to stop her and say, hey, you've got 3 or 4 projects out of all this. Focus in on that first aim, find out where the providers fit. You can do multiple ones, but that's not one project. That's 2 or 3 different projects. So make sure you're getting down into just the one. And then you want answerable questions. What do we have access to? If, you know, you're dependent on your question once tax returns, that may not be something that we actually have available that we can pull. What can you get out of the EMR? What can you do surveys for? Who are you reaching out to? Again, you just want to know what you can get, then pull, and don't ask a question if you're not going to have the availability to do it. And then for you can hit it again. Try not to make this a subjective one. Is this treatment, what's the best treatment for high blood pressure is not probably the research question you want to ask. What's the reduction in blood pressure of an ACE inhibitor compared to a calcium channel blocker? Are having residents good for the upcoming discussion? That's a little too subjective. You want to find out and get something measurable that you can bring in and be part of your research question. And then go ahead. Okay, and don't ask why questions. I kind of view this as toddlers don't make the best researchers. They ask lots of why questions, but it doesn't always provide the best depth of knowledge. You want to go into the hows, the wheres, the whens, the whats, and get broader. Again, go back to the blood pressure. Why does hydrochlorothiazide work? It's what function, how does hydrochlorothiazide work in the kidney as a diuretic, and get focused in a little bit more. Not that that's a great research question either, but again, you want to get focused away from just asking why. All right, next slide. I think this one comes up all at once. So, all right, good. All right, so the next one comes in, what's answerable with, again, practical constraints. Again, this is a time and money kind of thing. If you want to interview hundreds of providers across the states, would you have money to send out for those? If you want to do, I think of our PCORI project that we're getting off the ground. We want thousands of people with depression to participate in our study. We need the money to reimburse them for their time within that. And those are just constraints within your research project. So when you're asking a question, again, come back to the practical, where and what can you actually accomplish. If you don't have time to do the study and collect everything, just be honest and think and rethink your question to bring it back into one that you can do. Again, this one goes back into, you want to ask for specific and well-defined concepts. You don't want to be vague. You want to answer the who, where, when, and what. You want to say, this is in a rural population if we're doing it here. You want to say what you're looking for, as specific as you can, and again, narrow it right down in, because what goes on in a rural population may be different than what goes on in an urban population, and you want that spelled out kind of up front. It makes a difference if you're doing it in a clinic or in a hospital setting, an FQHC or a fee for service. Say that up front, and you're going to answer the question when it comes out much better overall. And again, at the end, also, to make these specific, don't ask for a policy or something to come out at the end of this. You want to answer a research question. How can we increase colon cancer screening? Again, you're asking yourself for a policy. You want to know what FIT tests do to improve colon cancer screening rates. So you don't want to go up to that bigger level where you're trying to save one. What can the state do to reduce COVID-19 spreading? It's not necessarily a good research question. what reduction in COVID-19 R naught rate when we're using, with the use of masks in a rural population, fits with a better question, something you can research, something that you can build off of. And again, it's not looking for a policy or a course of action. It's just finding the facts that we can have a discussion around. All right, next slide. And in the end, you want your research question to have some complexity to it, and again, be relevant to what your field is, what your area is, and have something to contribute or say. So you want them complex enough that it's not a yes/no question. To go back to the blood pressure, does hydrochlorothiazide lower blood pressure? Yes, but when you quantify it out, how much does hydrochlorothiazide lower blood pressure, or how much does hydrochlorothiazide lower blood pressure compared to how much a calcium channel blocker lowers blood pressure, then you have a more researchable idea. You don't want to just go with vague and superficial. Again, even on this, you want to narrow down that you can have some discussion around it. In general, this is more of a basic one. If you type it into your question into Google right now and already can find the answer, probably doesn't need to be the research question you're looking at. Now, I'll say, whatever your question is, if you find an answer in Google and it's not applied to your population or where you're working, you know, this is kind of the hallmark of the West Virginia PBRN. A lot of these ideas are out there, but nobody's tested them in a rural population across our state. So we're re-asking some questions, but we're doing them in a different population. So just think about that, and again, look, but again, if it's popping up as an easily found answer, you may want to go with a more complex one or look more at your specific group and refocus your question on that. Again, then for complexity and relevance, you want to address a problem that's relevant in your field. So what does this matter? What's the impact of it? Where is it going to help? I always throw out pityriasis rosea. We know what it is. We know where it comes from. We don't necessarily know what causes it. How relevant that is that worth the time and the money? I don't know, but those are some of the kind of things I think about. And again, the final one is, has it already been answered? Again, if you go and do your lit review and find the answer that in Kentucky they did something, we probably should do a different study than that, or ask a different question. And again, the different question can be your setting, but think about it that way. So I apologize for being so rushed, but I got a few example questions that I just threw out there. The first one is, why is there a low rate of testing for COVID-19? Again, not very specific. We are asking for testing and a rate, so you have something conceptual that you can measure, but again, it doesn't key you in as to the big purpose of what you're doing. So a better one would be, what does the use of a home test kit for COVID-19 have in an underserved rural community compared to current practice? We know what we're comparing it to. We know our population this way. So we have our who, we have our timing and when, we have specifically what we're going to be doing, and we're not just asking a vagueness. So if you can see that. My next one, I put in another vague why one as to why family medicine residencies are good. And I figured I'd use that as my transition to let everybody else go into the longer process. And I'm hoping Dr. Jameses and Dr. Baltiera have a good detailed research question that'll help demonstrate that. Does anybody have any questions? I know that was going 100 miles an hour, but I wanted time for the discussion on the project.
I would just comment, Bill, you did an excellent job.
Oh, thank you, Mary.